People are very, very interested in getting the information about UFOs. And as you point out, it is completely bipartisan. The most conservative Republicans and the most progressive Democrats, and virtually everybody in between, in both political parties, want this done. But then you have the people in the military and in the intelligence community that have been actively engaged in bringing down these craft and putting them into the possession of the private aerospace corporations for reverse engineering. There are Buddhists and Hindus and Zoroastrians and African Aboriginal people who have done the same kind of stuff. They transmute matter right in front of people. They walk on water, they levitate.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Watch Mojo's Unveiled podcast. I'm your host, Rob, and this is your reminder that Unveiled is available on all podcast platforms. So please go check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to listen. Leave us a rating and a review. It really helps us out. My guest today is Danny Sheehan. He is an acclaimed civil rights attorney who is at the forefront of the UAP disclosure and transparency movement. He is also the founder of the New Paradigm Institute, which aims to inform the public about the UAP phenomenon with the ultimate goal of securing full and responsible disclosure. Danny, thank you for joining us today.
Terrific. Thanks, Rob. It's great to be here.
Would you be able to start us off with a brief introduction for yourself? I know you're well known within the UFO, UAP community, but Watch Mojo's audience is very broad. So for anybody who's not familiar, how did an acclaimed attorney such as yourself get so interested in UFOs?
Well, as you noted, and I graduated from Harvard College and Harvard Law School and was the co-founder of the Harvard Civil Rights Law Review. My primary focus in the legal practice was in protecting whistleblowers and protecting journalists' right to protect their confidential sources. That I had actually initiated that case out of the Harvard Civil Rights Law Review that went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And because of that, I was in the represented the New York Times, one of the staff of lawyers that did in the Pentagon Papers case, then did also the whistleblowing operations against the off-the-shelf enterprise of Oliver North and those. So I was into that stuff, and I was doing a lot of that work from Jesuit National Headquarters. I was the legal counsel for their public policy office of the Jesuit order. And it was there that in 1976, shortly after the election of Jimmy Carter, I was contacted by the Congressional Research Service over at Jesuit headquarters. I was contacted by them and notified that President Carter had asked to have a major research project undertaken by the Congressional Research Service to ascertain what kind of documentation or proof we had within government documentation about the UFO phenomenon. Because, as people may know, President Carter had seen a UFO when he was governor of Georgia. Not like some distant light in the sky, but like treetop level, the length of a football field away. He and 11 other men that were, he was doing an address at this Lions Club in Georgia. And those other guys went out on the porch for a smoke back at that time. And there it was. So as soon as he was elected president, one of the first things he did was send to have the head of the Central Intelligence Agency come down to Plains, Georgia, to brief him there before he'd even come up to Washington. And the first thing he asked him about was the UFO issue. And it turns out that the CIA director at that time was George H.W. Bush, who had been appointed by President Ford right after Ford took over when Nixon resigned over the Watergate thing. So all of that was going on at the time. And I was in Jesuit headquarters in 1976 when he gets elected president. And it turns out that he asked, since he couldn't get the CIA to tell him anything about this, he asked to have the Congressional Research Service conduct a major investigation of it. And Dr. Marcia Smith, who was the head of the Science and Technology Division of the Congressional Research Service, contacted me at Jesuit headquarters and asked if I could get access to the Vatican archives to provide information that might be there on the UFO issue and their history of extraterrestrial contact of any kind. And I was given permission by the Jesuit headquarters to do that. So I became involved and became special counsel to the congressional research investigation that was conducted in 1977 into this rather extraordinary area. And in that context, I was given access to the classified portions of Project Blue Book, and was able to see photographs of crash retrieval, active crash retrieval going on. Could see the saucer that was there in the photograph that had hit into this field and plowed a big gouge through the field, and I began investigating this in my official capacity, and even though I was kind of better known for a lot of these other major public cases, including the Watergate case, where I was there in F. Lee Bailey's office. We represented James McCord, who was the CIA wiretapping specialist. So I had that kind of, I guess you could say, prominence about those other kind of cases. This other matter, I was engaging in kind of a closed door kind of investigation of this whole thing in my capacity as special counsel. And I was then asked by Dr. Marcia Smith at the Science and Technology Division of the Congressional Research Service to go and brief the top 50 scientists at SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, out at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California, to do a 3-hour seminar for them to discuss the theological implications of contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence. And so I became fairly deeply involved in that issue, and was contacted by Dr. John Mack at Harvard University, who had been dragged up in front of a faculty tribunal over his writing a book about the psychological impacts of contact experience that people were having. So I became the lawyer for Dr. John Mack, representing him in front of the Harvard Faculty Committee. And in that context, I was assigned to interview the major experts in this whole field throughout the whole world, to call them as potential witnesses on behalf of Dr. Mack in front of the Harvard Tribunal. And that was how I got to know everybody and learn what they were doing and what they had discovered. And I became general counsel for the PEER program, the Project for Extraordinary Experience Research, there in Cambridge, working with Dr. John Mack for the next 10 years. And so that's how I became involved in it. And I was contacted by Dr. Stephen Greer and asked to become general counsel for the Disclosure Project. So I was there vetting the witnesses that we would present in May of 2001 at the National Press Club. So I got to meet all of those people, the speakers at that event. And so I was asked to become general counsel by Steve Bassett later on in 2013 for the citizens hearings on the UFO issue to former senators and congressmen. And then I was retained by Luis Elizondo more recently, after he and Christopher Mellon brought the videos, the now well-known Tic Tac videos, to the New York Times, which were published basically right in the New York Times front page story in December of 2017. And since that time, there's been this rising crescendo of information coming out. And so I've been meeting with people who are whistleblowers. We've been involved with the people presenting information to the Senate Intelligence Committee, which has generated this 64-page bill that the United States Senate Intelligence Committee and Armed Services Committee have drafted and have passed through the Senate. but we were only able earlier in 2023 to get 23 pages of this approved out of the 64. Uh, so we have just been making a run at it again here this present legislative session to get this full 64-page bill put into the National Defense Authorization Act. And that's what all the hearings were about. You know, we've had the hearings with Dave Grush, we've had hearings with Luis Elizondo, we've had the 40 or so whistleblowers go behind closed doors under oath to present sworn depositions to the Senate Intelligence Committee. And so the process is underway to utilize the structure that was proposed by the United States Senate in their 64-page bill, the UFO or UAP Controlled Disclosure Act. That's what we're working with as the framework of what we're trying to get put into place to establish a mechanism of cooperation between the Congress and the executive branch to responsibly disclose this information in a process that would enable our culture to accommodate the information that's being obtained about this and to feather this information into the to the world, to the public, and to adjust our economic structures to be able to absorb some of the technological advances that they may provide, as well as, of course, discuss the profound philosophical and theological implications of realizing that not only our species is our species not only not at the center of the physical universe, as we sort of had dawn on us during the age of Copernicus and Galileo, but the fact is that we're not even at the apex of all biological sentient intelligence in the universe. And this is a major dramatic shift in worldview that is in the offing, and the process is underway right now in Congress.
Yeah, no small feat dealing with all of that, and we'll get into some of the specifics, I'm sure. But the most recent congressional hearing just happened on September 9th. In your view, what was the biggest takeaway, the most significant outcome from that specific hearing?
Well, from that specific hearing, Rob, was the fact that Congress is frustrated because the whistleblowers who are coming to them in closed doors behind the scenes in providing sworn statements to the members of the House and Senate about the existence of this secret program that's going on, which we'll get into some details about, but they don't dare testify in public because they don't believe that they're adequately protected against retaliation and recriminations on the part of the military services that they're in or the intelligence communities they're a part of. So, one of the primary focuses of the hearing on Tuesday, the September 9th hearing, was the inadequacy of the present whistleblower protection statutes. That became kind of a focal point of the discussion. Then a second focal point, of course, was this video that people have now heard about that was played by Congresswoman Luna, who was the chair of that special task force of the House Oversight Committee, showing a United States military plane firing a Hellfire missile at the UFO craft, and it basically just glancing off of it, and the craft just running away and ignoring the attack. So that drew a lot of media attention, that particular thing. But I think very importantly, you had the testimony of extremely credible witnesses who are security people for the United States Air Force Base who have seen the craft, like within 100 yards away. Again, like President Carter back in 1975 or so, when he saw his, that they can see the craft. The craft is like, that one was like 100 feet across. I mean, in another one, it was the size of a football field. hovering right over a United States Air Force base. And these are security police that were coming in to testify to the Congress. But there are vastly better situated people in the government who are actively working on the program to physically bring down UFOs so they can capture them. And there are people who are directly involved in the reverse engineering program, the ultra secret program that's going on right now, in which they're trying to secure access to the technology of these UFO craft so that our Defense Department can use this technology in developing a new weapons system. And so, therefore, the national security state people have veiled this entire activity going on beneath the umbrella of a highly secretive weapons development program, so that they've basically brought to the fore their authority to use lethal force to protect, like the atomic secrets, from the Rosenbergs again. And now that, but they've expanded beyond the protection of the weapons development project to denying the reality of the entire extraterrestrial civilization that are the source of these craft. So they've reached this kind of absurd position of thinking that in order to try to develop a new additional weapon system, that they're denying the existence of an entire extraterrestrial civilization and denying the fact that they're coming here to our planet, denying the fact that there are bases here on our planet, denying the opportunity to Congress to even review the policies, lying to Congress, committing perjury to Congress, embezzling hundreds of billions of dollars from the military budget to divert into this secret program of trying to back engineer the technology to make a weapon system. This is kind of preposterous. It's like the old Sufi saying that when a pickpocket meets a saint, all you can see are his pockets, and so that they've got this tunnel vision kind of activity going on now through the Defense Department, now transformed into the War Department, and the War Department intelligence community, making war on the UFOs, trying to knock them out of the sky and steal them so that they can commandeer their technology, rather than admitting to Congress that this is going on, getting Congress to become involved, getting the State Department to be involved, to what our relations are going to be with these extraterrestrial beings, and so that we're missing this extraordinarily important opportunity, or at least it's being postponed, to actually develop the relationship with the extraterrestrial civilization and to modify our institutions to try to accommodate what may be as much as 8 billion years more knowledge about not only things technological and having to do with physics and science in the nature of our entire universe, but of course the exploration that they've engaged in, very importantly, of the relationship between consciousness and the material world. And what insights they've gained from that theological or metaphysical exploration that relates directly to physics. So this is all going on right now, and the Congress is engaged actively in the discussions of all of this right now, and periodically holding hearings to let some of the information out, constantly noting that there's much better and more important information that cannot be subject to public hearings until those whistleblowers are protected better. And so we're trying to get Congress to not only pass the 64 pages of the comprehensive bill that we'll talk about, uh, to oversee the process of the disclosure of this information, but they're also contemplating a much more vigorous protection statute for protecting uniquely whistleblowers about the UFO phenomenon. So all of that's going on right now, and so we're engaged at the New Paradigm Institute in reaching out and educating people around the country. We have offices, or we have groups now in 32 of the states. We're going to be having members and groups in each of the 435 congressional districts to continue to pressure our elected representatives to fulfill their constitutional responsibility of overseeing the executive branch that is engaged in this clandestine operation right now. That many of us, I think the vast majority of people, both on the left and the right, believe is unconstitutional. For them to be lying to Congress and defying the ability of Congress to oversee their activities, and engaging in a covert propaganda program against all the citizens of the country, which again is profoundly unconstitutional.
Right.
That's what's going on.
One of the things that they emphasized very strongly during the latest hearing was that this is a bipartisan issue, that people on both sides of the aisle are
Yeah.
involved in fighting for transparency. Regarding the rest of those pages from the bill that's been
Yes.
submitted, if all of that was to be passed, what are the specific differences that it would make within this the whole process of disclosure?
Well, one of the things that it would do is it would reinforce the 23 pages that were already passed back in December of 2023, in which the Congress ordered, all 6 of our United States military services, all 18 of our American intelligence organizations, and all 32 of the United States Defense Department agencies that are assumed to be in possession of information about the UFOs and the non-human intelligence that is responsible for them, have ordered them to gather all of that information together dating back to January 1st of 1945 and to make it available in digitized form to the National Archives, in the classified portion of the National Archives, so the members of Congress can get access to it. That part has been passed, but the problem is that without further enforcement capabilities to force them to comply with the order of Congress, people are assuming that they're going to refuse to do that, because the Defense Department and the intelligence agencies have been lying actively to Congress. And so they're going to want to try to maintain the false impression that they're not in possession of information like this. And so that they would be contradictory to their kind of false narrative if they were to say, oh, yes, look, we've got 20 billion pages of information about all of this, but the members of Congress know that they've got that kind of information because they've been getting this sworn testimony behind closed doors from people that are involved in the program. So that's where we are right now. But if in fact the remaining 43 pages or whatever, 41 pages could get passed, the first thing that would happen is that the members of Congress, the majority leader and minority leaders in the House and Senate, would be nominating 9 people, like a Supreme Court, basically, to be appointed by the president, uh, to be a panel that would review all of that information, all of those tens of thousands of pages, and photographs, and videos, and materials, actual craft that have been seized, would be made available to the Congress to inspect, and then decide what the policies are going to be. And then this particular board, they call it the UAP Records Review Board, it's modeled after the JFK Records Review Board that pressured the release of all of those documents about the Kennedy assassination. That board would not only have the obligation of reviewing all of that information, but they would have the authority, pursuant to this Senate passed statute, they would have the authority to order the release of all of the information that was 25 years old or more, that virtually anything that happened before the year 2000, that they would order it to be released publicly. Now, that would be an extraordinarily important event. And of course, under the statute, the 23 pages have already been passed. That due date is September 30th of this year. So, we're down the road right now. We're here on the 17th of September. Well, we're doing this, so basically in another 12, 14 days, these members, these military services and intelligence agencies are going to be required by law to turn this information over to the Library of Congress's Congressional Research, excuse me, to the National Archives. And then the same board, if this additional 40 pages were passed, would also have the authority from Congress to craft a UFO controlled disclosure campaign plan to provide to the president. And that the president would be directed by Congress to start rolling out this information under the authority of the president himself to do this. That's the part that hasn't been passed yet. That's the additional 40 pages. So that the peculiar situation we're in is that Congress has ordered all of these agencies to gather it all together and to put it into the classified portion of the National Archives, but there's nobody assigned yet to review it, and nobody yet authorized to order the release of any of it, and no one in there to design this kind of controlled disclosure program that we have to have. So that's the status of it right now. So the New Paradigm Institute is one of the primary citizens organizations that is specifically established to raise the consciousness of the people around the country, to set up these groups inside each one of the 435 congressional districts and in all 50 states, to basically educate the people, mobilize the people to confront their legal representatives in Congress, to make them pass the additional 40 pages, and also to pass the statutes protecting the whistleblowers so that they won't be fired, so that they won't be denied any kind of further promotions, they won't have their pensions taken away, or they won't be put in prison for allegedly violating their the national defense clearances that they have. So all of that is going on right now. It's an extraordinarily energized process that's going on, with hearings going on, votes going on. Uh, but we've just missed one opportunity here, that was to include the entire 64 pages that have been passed earlier by the Senate, just include them in this multi-thousand page National Defense Authorization Act. Because if they agreed to put it into there, then the members of the House and the Senate would be required just to vote up or down the entire bill, you know, with this in it. And they didn't do that. Neither the Senate nor the House chose the shortcut of putting this into the National Defense Authorization Act. So now we're faced with the much more arduous task of having the standalone bill be presented to the House and Senate, to get the Republican leadership in the Senate side under Senator Thune, and the leadership over on the House side, which is basically under the leadership of Michael Johnson, to agree to put the bill on the floor for a vote, both in the Senate and the House. We're confident that in the Senate that we would probably get at least 90 of the 100 senators approving it, and if it were put on the floor for a vote, but which means it's got to go through Senator Thune as the majority leader. The same way over on the House side, we would have to get a rule from the Rules Committee, and a support from Michael Johnson, the Speaker of the House, to put the bill on the floor for a vote. That's been the bottleneck right now. Is you can't get Michael Johnson to do it because he's waiting to be told what to do by Donald Trump. And aside from the watering down of the constitutional authority of the Congress to oversee the activities of the president, setting that aside for a moment, the reality is that Donald Trump himself, even though he has promised repeatedly during the campaign, his second campaign, that if elected, he would immediately release all the information about the UFO stuff. when he's gotten on board, he's not done it. He has refused to date to actually fulfill his promise in the same way that he has failed to fulfill his promise with regard to the Epstein files. So the people are all up in arms over the Epstein files thing, and so that you can see they're pecking away at that. They're getting the Justice Department to release more of them. They're getting, step by step, they're kind of extracting more of those Epstein files. But we have to generate a similar process with regard to the UFO issue. And people are very, very interested in getting the information about UFOs. And as you point out, it is completely bipartisan. The most conservative Republicans and the most progressive Democrats and virtually everybody in between in both political parties, want this done, except for the leadership of the Republican Party, which at this point in time is refusing to put the bills on the floor as a separate bill for the House and Senate to vote on. So that's where we are right now. But if in fact the bill were to be passed and the Board of Review was to be assigned, we would see right coming up on September 30th, we would see a major release of information that's 25 years old or more, anything earlier than the year 2000, dating all the way back to January 1st of 1945, to be released publicly. But that given the fact that they have not yet put the whole bill onto the floor for a vote, the odds are that the executive branch intelligence agencies and Defense Department agencies are going to refuse to comply with the simple order from Congress to do it. They're asserting that it's their right to protect all of this information, and that they aren't even required to give it to Congress. So that there's a major constitutional confrontation getting ready to come up here on September 30th. So our New Paradigm Institute is telling everybody about that. Ergo, we're here today to talk with you about it, to tell all of your viewers that they've got to contact their senators, both of their senators, Democrat and Republican, and their congressional representative, whether that representative is a Republican or a Democrat, and tell them that they've got to support passing this bill as a separate standalone bill, since it hasn't been put into the National Defense Authorization Act, so that we can move forward with this disclosure process. And they've got to be prepared that if in fact such a statute has not been passed by September 30th, in another 2 weeks here, that the odds are that the military and the intelligence community is going to defy Congress and refuse to tell them what they know about this. So that's the status that we're in right now. So there's one more constitutional crisis kind of hovering on the horizon here, coming up on September 30th, and that we wanted everybody to know about this and to demand that their congressmen and senators mandate that their 2023 command issued already to these executive branch agencies be complied with, or that dramatic steps be taken to extract the information from them. That has to happen.
Well, there you go. There's your call to action right there. Everybody needs to get involved and make their voice heard. Um, what are some of the biggest outside forces that are presenting obstacles? Is it institutional resistance? Is there a corporate interest at play, a combination of both, or are there other factors that aren't being really spoken about? What is holding up this process?
Well, there are several layers to this, Rob. I mean that the one of the I would say start from the bottom and work our way up, so it'll get more exciting. But at the very base of this are the private aerospace corporations. They have been put into possession of some of these craft that have been captured, and that they've been assigned by contract, secret contract, to back engineer them, to analyze the technology and back engineer them. And they desperately want to get patents on this technology so that they would be in a position for the next 1,000 years of being able to license any of this technology to our United States government and make trillions of dollars over the next decades, right? And so that they're leaning in really heavily to keep this secret, to not require them to reveal that they've got the materials, and to not compromise their ability to get an independent patent on it, because it's all been funded by the secret funds of the government. Okay, so the base is the private aerospace corporations. But then you have the people in the military and in the intelligence community that have been actively engaged in bringing down these craft and putting them into the possession of the private aerospace corporations for reverse engineering into this weapons system. And the highest level military and intelligence officials are all planning to go to work for the aerospace corporation once they get their 20 years in. They get their 20 years in and they get full retirement benefits from the military or the intelligence community. And then they go to work, they get hired by these private aerospace corporations. So they have this inclination to ingratiate themselves to these corporations by giving them contracts and standing ready to go to work for them and to bring with them all of their contacts and Rolodexes that they've developed, on the payroll of the United States government. So there's that element in the intelligence community and in the Defense Department who are waiting to go to work for these private aerospace corporations. So there's that whole element. Then there are the full-scale career officers in the intelligence community and in the Defense Department who genuinely want to keep this secret because they believe that it is the penultimate weapons development policy for our United States military and intelligence community. They view that as their principal mission, to develop the military capacity of the country and keep a secret from our adversaries. So that there's that third element that is, if you could call it, a good faith kind of effort to protect the national security of the military program. Not that they're perceiving the UFOs as a threat, because they don't. There's no indication. There's no activity on the part of these people indicating that they believe this to be a viable threat. This was making Luis Elizondo be totally upset, because he said, "Look, I've got verified footage of a football size, field size craft coming right over the top of a major nuclear facility, like in turning off all of the missiles." He said, "I view this as a national security threat." And yet the entire upper echelons of the United States military are not doing anything about it. That they're just like pretending it's not true. And when he was trying to find out why they were doing that, they end up stonewalling him. And that's why he quit. And so that's another whole layer, those people. And then you've got this extremely small group of people that are in charge of this entire secret program that reside deep in the bowels of the national security state. That this is the number one secret of our entire national security state operations, right? And that they are devoted to keeping this completely secret so that they can remain in complete monopoly control of what the policies are. Okay. And that's a very ominous group, because they're willing to deploy lethal force to shut out not only adversaries, but American citizens and people that are in the government who are trying to get at this information because they have a constitutional obligation to do so. And they are being subjected to threats, of potential lethal force against them. And they're intimidating the senators, they're intimidating the members of the House of Representatives. And so that this tiny group, which they call the legacy group, is they've now evolved into being a major federal criminal racketeering operation. threatening physical abuse to people who are witnesses, which is a federal crime, embezzling money from the other appropriations in the defense budget, lying to Congress, committing perjury. This is a list of predicate crimes that constitute a federal criminal racketeering operation. Okay, so then you've got that group, and then ultimately, and though this may come as a bit more of a surprise, you have the ET people themselves, who clearly are completely capable, if they choose to do so, to land on the White House lawn, or land in the middle of the ellipse, and say, look, here we are. Or they could undertake any kind of more subtle diplomatic processes to begin the process of letting everybody know that they're here, and what their agenda is, and what their interests are, and how we could accommodate them, or engage in good faith negotiations with them to establish a relationship with them, like we have between and among our nation states. So there's this multiple set of layers of the people that have a motive to stop the simple disclosure of all of this. And then there's one more final element that I'd have to point out. And there are those of the people who genuinely want the full disclosure, but that they genuinely understand that it has to be done in kind of a controlled process so that we can adjust our institutions. We can adjust our economic institutions, our geopolitical institutions, our religious institutions, that all of these major institutions in our academic universities, to figure out what courses there need to be taught to adjust our people to this, that is an extraordinarily important element inside the national security state infrastructure, who are genuinely trying to set up a sound and responsible process by means of which this set of revelations can be made. And then I guess finally there's us, the citizens, who are desirous of getting this information out, because we genuinely believe that this will instigate major changes in our institutions that can cure a lot of the deficiencies that we see manifest in our institutions right now, because they think there's no reason not to act like they're acting. They don't seem to get it, that they're living under the constant threat of total thermonuclear destruction and the massive destruction of our global ecological systems through global climate change isn't a good result. How is this working right now? Of our institutions functioning the way they presently are, they're in dramatic need of reform. And if we can get them to reform pursuant to the need to get adjusted to the reality of the surrounding civilization that we're in the midst of, but not part of yet. Okay, so all of these factors go into trying to determine what it is that we're going to be doing, and so the new Paradigm Institute has been established to lead this operation, and we have other allied groups. There's the UAP Disclosure Fund. There's the Sol Foundation at Stanford. There are others that are involved, but the New Paradigm Institute is primarily the grassroots organizing, conscientizing, mobilizing operation that is going to do both things. One is to put the maximum pressure on the elected representatives to perform their constitutional responsibilities, but also reaching out directly to establish direct communication with the extraterrestrial beings, to establish what we refer to as citizen diplomacy, to reach out, establish communications with them. If the government is going to continue to lie to us and dissemble and lie and threaten Congress to keep them from doing this in a peaceful manner, what we have to do is take direct action and reach out to the beings themselves. We know how to do this. We can come together and go outdoors and sit in fields and summon them telepathically. This is all true. This is all true. This really works. And that we need to open up diplomatic channels to these people, because we cannot rely upon the national security state people who have the kind of extraordinarily narrow lens through which they're viewing this entire reality to determine what our policies are going to be with regard to these beings that are going to affect our human civilization for the next 10,000 years. And these decisions are going to be made right within the next 5 to 10 year period, because it's absolutely clear that we're going to be discovering life elsewhere. And as the Catholic Church has announced, back in 2009, November 11th of 2009, Pope Benedict, directed the director of the Pontifical Observatory to issue the statement asserting that now, in light of the discovery of more and more of these new exoplanets, by the spaceborne telescopes that we have now, the James Webb and the Hubble and others, it's perfectly clear that we're going to discover life elsewhere in the universe. And so that the time has arrived now. The time is now to begin this all important discussion of the profound philosophical and theological implications of knowing our real place in the universe as a species, but also in preparing our culture in our systems to accommodate this reality. So this is an extraordinarily exciting and important period in our human history, and people are privileged to be alive now while this is happening. And so that we're trying to figure out how to get the information to the people and realize that they're authorized now by the New York Times, they're authorized by Congress to do this instead of waiting for someone else to do it for us.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people are saying that disclosure has already happened because the door is kind of open to have these conversations now. And I want to ask you a lot more about the New Paradigm Institute, but the idea
Sure.
of the UAPs and NHI as a potential threat has come up a couple times in this conversation, and I'm interested to know where you stand on that because I
Sure.
know that you've represented Stephen Greer and Luis Elizondo, who have kind
Yeah.
of polar opposite views on that.
Yeah.
I've spoken to both of them myself on this show. Where do you
Mhm.
stand on the potential threat narrative that is presented? Even in Congress, there seems to be overtones of it with regard
Oh,
to
yeah.
UAP.
Well, I mean, the reason that there are overtones of it in Congress is because that's how people from inside the national security state have been peddling this. They say, well, you can't get the Congress to do anything for the right reason. So maybe if you can get them interested in massive military contracts so that the people that are paying for their congressional elections, from the corporate aerospace corporations, will support it. So that's the reason that this whole threat analysis is there. But the bottom line is that you have to realize that given the worldview that is presently dominant in both the Republican and Democratic parties, that we as a nation state have the right to be attempting to foist our interests on the rest of the world, to maintain our privileged access to the strategic raw materials on the planet that are needed by our industries and our corporations to generate jobs and stimulate our economy. As long as that's the operating thesis that they're engaged in, we have a problem here. We have a problem here because that it is true that if in fact a football-sized triangle comes floating over the top of a Minuteman missile site and shuts off all 10 of the missiles so they become completely useless, that is experienced by our national security state infrastructure as a threat to our quote nuclear deterrent. And it's also a threat to the use of our nuclear weapons as an offensive weapon to try to coerce other people to do what we want to do under the threat of our destroying them if they don't do it. And we so that the bottom line is I can thoroughly understand why people charged with under our constitutional government with the physical protection of our nation state and protecting our military capacity to foist our interests on the rest of the world, whatever you think about that, that they view this as a threat to have these craft come and shut off not only our nuclear missiles, but they have shut off entire nuclear aircraft carrier battle groups, out in the middle of the sea at night. Just come over the top of them, shut off all their propulsion, all their communication systems, all their electricity, so that they're completely dead in the ocean. Now that's got to be experienced as a threat, to their offensive and defensive capacity. So that our New Paradigm Institute is perfectly cognizant of the legitimacy of that concern. So we're different from some people who think, oh, great, just open up everything, tell everybody everything instantaneously. And every single one of the species of the UFO people are really nice guys. And, everything's going to be hunky dory. We think that's a bit of a simplistic, naive kind of approach. So we believe that there needs to be consideration undertaken in our citizen dialogues with the ET people to communicate to them that, look, that we've got some legitimate interests here. We we want to maintain as much as possible our own agency over our own decisions here on our planet, even if we're threatening to destroy ourselves with thermonuclear weapons, even if we're threatening to destroy the entire eco structure of our planet. We are still, in a kind of like an infantile way, insisting upon still being in charge. And so that we have to try to, at the New Paradigm Institute, decide, excuse me, to what degree any degree of our sovereignty or agency over our own decision making is going to ultimately be compromised here in having a relationship with them, because they have repeated to people they've had contacts with, and there are hundreds of examples of this, of saying, you people have to stop developing and deploying nuclear weapons because you're going to totally destroy the entire ability of your planet to gestate life. And it's quite clear that they have some interest in this, that they're collecting flora and fauna and genetic materials on our planet, including human genomes. They're collecting these things potentially to be seeding life on other planets. So that they've got a mission that they're engaged in here, and we're threatening that, and it's just one species. You don't have the right to destroy your entire planet and annihilate all the other species on your planet.
Right. I do very, I like the name of your organization a lot, the New Paradigm Institute. And clearly we're on the edge of a paradigm shift. What do you think that looks like? Let's say, over the next years, the things really fall into place and we do get that sort of responsible disclosure rollout. How does the world change in the short term?
Well, one of the very first things that's going to happen is the complete reliance upon petroleum and fossil fuels as the source of our electrical and mechanical energy is going to change right away. Because clearly the means that the craft that the ET people move around in, that there's been scientific analysis done on this, and that we know, for example, that they can come from 80,000 feet, that is technically outer space, down through our atmosphere into the surface of our oceans in 0.7 tenths of 1 second. And they stopped completely dead, generating 6,000 Gs of force on the material of the craft with no adverse effect on it at all. And we know that we have nothing that can propel a massive craft like that at that speed, nor survive those kind of G forces. And so that this technology, the materials technology of which the ships are made, the amount of the energy, they've done an analysis of it, the amount of energy that is dispelled in moving from 80,000 feet down to the surface of the ocean and stopping dead like that, going under the ocean with no splash, and proceeding under the ocean at over 200 miles an hour under the water, that the amount of energy that is expended in that one single move is more than all of the electrical energy generated by all 103 nuclear power plants in our United States in an entire year. Okay, so that that we're in the Stone Age here, basically digging up dead plant matter and burning it, and letting the fumes go up into our atmosphere and ruin our ecology, where this other energy source is available. Okay, no, so that's one. It's going to be an immediate event. The second one, of course, is going to be on our geopolitical relationships with other nation states. That we're going to have some sort of a coming together much more effective than our present United Nations in order to make common decisions and overcome this nation state, bifurcation of one of us from every other one. Okay, so we're going that is going to be absolutely clear. Okay, thirdly, there's going to be this massive economic impact of the other technologies that are available to us. There's going to have to be some sort of decisions being made as to what type of a rheostat, we might need to put on all these technologies flowing into our economy. That there has to be some sort of a process by means of which this is governed in a way that makes it effective. That it doesn't just blow up everything and have us not be able to absorb it and not be able to continue to use our present systems. This is going to be extraordinarily important so that the economic and technological decisions that need to be made. And the fact is, nobody's really doing that right now because they're still being confronted by the authorities by saying there's no such thing here. It's just not, there's nothing here to see. Okay, so that's one of the other jobs of the New Paradigm Institute. Not only are we devoted to trying to get the disclosure made in a sound and responsible way, but we have to start figuring out what the new paradigm is going to look like, pursuant to your question. So what is it going to look like? The bottom line is to get the nearby star systems that have sentient life in them and have reached the technological level of being able to travel back and forth from our planet, we have to be able to start generating a state of consciousness among our people that basically view that as like discovering another continent. Just like the Europeans discovered the North American continent and said, "Oh, holy mackerel! We thought the Earth was flat and we were going to fall off the end of the Earth, but it turns out there's an entire other continent over there. There's another civilization of people there. We have to figure out how to relate to all of that." And they were able to do that. And so that what we've got to do is when we look up and see a star pulsing deep into the nighttime sky, start thinking about that as being like France.
Right.
only more so, or Germany or Europe or Africa. That there are other cultures there. There are other beings there that are different from us culturally and potentially even racially. But that we've got to have a level of consciousness among our people and our institutions that has that kind of a sense of a relationship with them. So that's a big thing. And then another a fourth thing, major impact is going to be on the religions. And I think what we're going to have to see the Catholic Church specifically come forward with their own disclosure. They're going to have to acknowledge that that what happened institutionally in the Catholic Christian Church is that in the early centuries of the Catholic Christian Church, the hierarchy of the church decided to superimpose itself between the individual and the actual numinous kinds of experience that individual human beings are capable of. This unistic experience that actually engenders a certain kind of charisms, or what they call the talents, that human beings are capable of mental telepathy. Human beings are capable of remote viewing. human beings are capable of healing through the directed intention of their consciousness. That we have the capacity to engage in precognition, clearly so. That there are psychic, what are characterized as psychic capabilities of our human species that have been actively suppressed by the Catholic Church, asserting that those kind of charisms and talents are reserved solely for the priesthood. That monks can levitate, monks can go fasting and have precognition and other kind of things, and we can celebrate them as saints. But that's not for you. That's not for the lay people, right? Because at the time that they started setting up all of these institutions, 99.9% of all the people were completely illiterate, and they never traveled more than 50 miles away from the place where they were born. And so that those that were inside the church hierarchy said, we have to really dumb this down for these folks, and try to figure out to what degree they're interested in these metaphysical dimensions of reality at all, and be very practical with them. And so what they did is they developed a whole set of institutions that were predicated upon the ignorance and the lack of interest on the part of the vast majority of the regular population. That's no longer true. That's no longer true. They have to disclose the fact that they've known that our human family is on the brink of a major next step in our biological evolution. That's what's happening here. That these prophets that we see, Jesus of Nazareth and Buddha and Confucius, these others, these are forerunners of the evolution, the biological evolution of our species into our next phase of evolution. And people aren't reflecting upon this. We were all at one point Australopithecus. Then they evolved to Cro-Magnon man, and then Neanderthal man, and now Homo sapien. And the other species is gone. Those earlier species are gone, but that's us. That still was us coming up. And we're us now as Homo sapien, but we're on the verge of breaking into the next biological phase of our existence. And our Homo sapien species is going to disappear, just like the Cro-Magnons are gone. That's happening in a process. And this has been going on over the last several thousands of years. And the churches in religious communities have gotten into mythologizing it, and not coming to grips with the fact that this is a real biological phenomenon. And these kind of prophets, these kind of seers, are manifestations. As Jesus has said, you will all do much greater things than I. That you just need to understand. He said, it isn't so much what I'm saying to you, it's what I am. Look at what I am here. That you are capable of these things. And he was trying to bring the good news to the human family. And of course, the people that are in charge of the institutions at the time are freaking out because they're tied to the old ossified dogmas that they've imposed to try to manipulate and exploit and control the masses of people. So there's a radical set of changes that need to come about here. And the Catholic Church is responsible for having to lead the way on this. That's why I was at Jesuit headquarters. The Jesuit order was created in 1537 to reform the Catholic Church, the Catholic Christian Church, to reform it so that it could, in fact, avoid the Protestant need for reformation of the church. That's what the whole Jesuit order exists for. And Pedro Arrupe, who was the superior general of the Society of Jesus when I was there at the headquarters, was very clear about this, that we as a Jesuit order at that time from the headquarters were responsible for responding to the fact that we've developed thermonuclear weapons and that we're getting set to destroy our entire human species. We're bringing to an ignominious end, the whole evolution of our human species here on our planet. Somebody better pay some attention to this. And that's what the Jesuit order was committed to doing. And they went through a major reformation from 1962 to 1972 in that 10-year period under Pedro Arrupe to make them into a much more aggressive, forward-leaning operation to try to reform the church in our society. That's how I got involved in all of this. I see this as an absolutely extraordinary opportunity for our human family to turn and be realistic about this evolutionary process that we're going through, and get lessons from other civilizations that have gone through the same process.
Yeah,
So
that's
that
fascinating. You don't often hear about the church being involved in this whole disclosure process, but do they have their own set of information, documentation, and such that they're sitting on that could play a role in this?
Oh, surely they do. Surely they do. I mean, the Catholic Church for 2,000 years, 2,000, years has been the primary library, writing down and maintaining kind of an historical perspective on what it is that's going on since the burning of the library at Alexandria. I mean, it is the repository of some of the most important information historically. Now, because of them having uh, gotten themselves attached to maintaining the old institutional structures, there's a major force operational inside the church of wanting to keep things like they were, and not be willing to do this. And they're attached to believing that Jesus Christ, Jesus of Nazareth, is the only person who is ever capable of doing any of those things that he's done. It was just totally untrue. I mean, there are Buddhists and Hindus and Zoroastrians and African Aboriginal people who have done the same kind of stuff. They transmute matter right in front of people. They walk on water, they levitate. They can heal people with a touch. But these are not exclusive capabilities, that just Christian saints or much less prophets, have. And so the church is going to have to come to grips with this, and it can play a very major leadership role in getting people adjusted to the fact that our encounter with these extraterrestrial civilizations is just a basic accelerated look into the future of what the kind of possibilities are for the probably positive and negative experiences that they've encountered along the way. And that we need to open our dialogue with these people and open our academies and universities to getting access to this information, not keep it exclusively in the hands of some tiny little group of a dozen men, who are exploiting it and manipulating it, or the other layers of people that are trying to seek individual profit, or some sort of second career in the aerospace industry. These are not the people that we need to leave in charge of formulating these policies. We've got to get everybody involved, and the economists have to be very active here in figuring out how we're going to be moving into an age of that may be beyond scarcity. If we actually not only, I'll point out, not only have access to other resources on in other star systems, on other planets, in other asteroid belts, to get access to these resources, but very importantly, get access to a form of technology that is capable of collapsing the wave function in alternative realities that exist in different vibrational frequencies, and to be able to direct human intention to collapse the wave function, to condense the next microsecond of time into manifesting material manifestations of alternative realities. I mean, you got to really understand what we're dealing here with. I mean, it's that I've told this story before, but the the way people are approaching this thing at the present time is very much like the experience I had with two of my friends back in 1970, I think it was. One of my friends, Joe Zinn, was a computer programmer for IBM. And my other friend, Robert McNamara, was one of my school buddies. And we were sitting around together in New York City one Sunday afternoon, and Joe Zinn was saying, this stuff with all these computers, he said, that's amazing. He said, in another 100 years, They're going to be able to do things that you can't even conceive of right now. So McIntosh said, like what?
Well,
You know, it's so that's where we are right now. People are all speculating. Oh, I wonder what we're going to find out from all these ET people. I mean, you can't even begin to guess at some of the things that we're going to be able to learn. And one of these things is that they have access to a technology that is capable of collapsing the wave function, and that they can actually condense the potentialities that abide in the vibrational realm of reality, to condense that into a specific chosen reality at the next moment, which is how they move their craft from a different star system to bang bang like that. Here they are in our Earth orbit. It's not like, oh, how fast can they go? You know, oh, let's get up into warp speed. Let's. But they can move instantaneously, which of course is astral travel. That we have this entire kind of supposed mythology about astral travel and the ability of human beings to actually project their consciousness outside of their body. And that we're knocking on the door of that technology now, and they're trying to figure out how to make shadow warriors, how we can actually project our military people behind enemy lines without having to drop them out of airplanes. I mean, this is embarrassing at a minimum. I mean, I'm in a position of having to defend our human species, to an extraterrestrial civilization, and I've got to take into account. Our New Paradigm Institute has to be able to do that. We have to understand, be completely compassionate about our shortcomings right now, but completely filled with optimism about all the positive things that our human family is capable of. I mean, we don't want to go trying to brag to the ETs. Oh, look at our wonderful bridges. Look, we can build tunnels underneath the ocean. That's not likely to impress them very much in light of what they're capable of doing, but they will recognize that that's something. You've got some really good qualities here. And we have wonderful music. We have the love relationships. There's tons of positive things that we need to focus on, and not become fearful over the fact that, that, oh, if we encounter an extraterrestrial civilization, they're going to think that we're like, like orangutans or something, and they're just going to breed us like rats or something, or worse yet, eat us. That's not what's going on here. That they've been here for some time. I mean, we know perfectly well. We've got direct firsthand accounts of face-to-face encounters with these beings from Philip Corso, back in June of 1945 at Alamogordo, at Yucca Flats, at White Sands, where we were getting set to detonate the first atomic bomb. One of these craft was landed right there. And he walked up and had a direct telepathic communication with them, which he left an 8 millimeter home black and white movie for his grandchildren after he died, for them to see it, and him telling them about that experience that he had. So I know that's true because I've seen it. And so the opportunity that our human family has here is something that we need to be able to convey to people, so that, without them thinking we're some kind of cult, or that we're, some kind of like naive idiots. And the reason that I play a role in this is because people have a pretty good guess that I'm not a naive idiot, because I wouldn't have been able to do the things we've done in the past. I wouldn't have been chosen to be one of the lawyers for the New York Times or the Pentagon Papers, or for NBC, to establish the right of journalists to protect their news sources. We wouldn't have been the ones chosen to openly reveal the existence of the off-the-shelf enterprise, to get congressional hearings held on those. We're not stupid, and we're not naive. The people that are part of the New Paradigm movement are intelligent professionals that are trying to have this done in a responsible manner. And what we're trying to do is get our people educated, raise their consciousness about all of this stuff, get them mobilized, and protect our constitutional structures, so that we keep the Congress involved, even if they don't seem to immediately display the worthiness to bother with them, because they don't seem to have the courage to do the stuff that's necessary. But, it was part of our being compassionate about our own selves, our own species. But at the same time, we can't be, acquiesce to this condition of things. We've got to make progress here, and that's what we're doing. The New Paradigm Institute is helping to lead the way. We're in alliance with other organizations. We meet rather regularly. We're getting set to have a major global disclosure day that's going to be coming up October 19th. That's going to give us some time to see what these agencies do on September 30th. And if they were to reveal anything, part of our job on Global Disclosure Day on October 19th is going to be to explain this to people. How much have they revealed? How much do we think they're still concealing? What are the implications of what they've revealed? What are the implications if they don't reveal anything? If they just stiff Congress, and tell them to pound sand, like Trump is doing, to the courts. Who cares what they say, or Steve Miller and these people saying, Ratcliffe at the CIA, or Cash McCall saying, here, just ignore the courts. We can't have that going on. We've got to preserve our constitutional structures here. So we're going to be, like, in a sense, bodhisattva, like, coming back and working with our Congress, keeping them involved, working to educate them, et cetera, meet with our military people to demonstrate our understanding of what their perspective is, not demonize them, not otherize them. We've got to do all of this together. I've actually sat in a room where AOC and Marjorie Taylor Greene can actually sit at the same place and have an intelligent conversation about this, because they both agree that we ought to reveal this to the people, and we ought to do it in a sound and responsible manner. So I don't think that people are going to get away with caricaturizing us, as being either naive or silly, or not being appreciative of the legitimate national security concerns from the point of view of preserving our nation state. But we're going to have to do all of these things, and that's why we really appreciate getting to come on shows like yours and talk to the people that you talk with, and get them excited. Ask them to contact the newparadigminstitute.org, sign up and become members of Citizens for Disclosure. It's completely free. All you do is sign up, become a member of the Citizens for Disclosure, and we will direct you to who your local group is in your congressional district. And ideally we'll end up having chapters in each election district, not just the congressional district, but there are election precincts inside each of the states, to have a whole group of people there inviting their neighbors in, to have like Friday evening soirees, showing you videotapes, of these ETs, and of the craft that they fly, and having interviews, get people assigned to read things like Richard Dolan's 2-volume set, UFOs in the national security state. If you really want to get a good look at the history of this, it's simple. You can go around Amazon and you order the 2 volumes of Richard Dolan's UFOs in the national security state, and sit back and on a weekend, instead of, watching, 18 football games, read read a book, and this information is there, and what we're doing at the New Paradigm Institute is we're trying to make it entertaining, engaging, in short little bits that people can absorb. We're working at the technology of this. So as you know, we're quite excited about this period in time. Now, this is an absolutely extraordinary opportunity. They're right at the same time when people have this feeling that things are falling apart. Oh, look at NATO. We don't have NATO anymore. Oh, Russia's invading and attacking the Ukraine. Here's Israel, which has been, this absolutely esteemed community, for the last, 80 years, heroically struggling to establish themselves, get caught under people like Netanyahu, who's basically killing 65,000 people, bombing them away, and people are despairing. They're on the brink of despairing about us being able to get control over ourselves. This presents an opportunity for all of us to take a much larger perspective, a much more expand perspective on reality itself. and see the fullness of opportunity that's in front of us here. Okay, and that we can transcend these kind of ossified institutions that we've gotten into that are leading us down the pathway to thermonuclear war and to a global destruction of our ecology. We can turn away from this path and turn to the stars and have direct communications with these people and establish friendship with them and cooperative relationships. This is an astonishingly valuable period. I say this next 5 to 10 year period, we're going to be making these decisions. You can either stand by and be a mere spectator, or you can participate in this kind of trans-historic period that we're in, and actually become informed about what's going on and form your own group of citizens for disclosure in your local community, and go on your local cable television shows and on your podcasts, to have everybody talk about the exciting things that they're doing.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I can't imagine something that has the potential to unite the world in a positive way more than, this disclosure movement, and realizing that we're part of a cosmic neighborhood and not just this isolated group
Right.
on a rock here.
Yeah.
Danny, thank you so much for your
That's
time. Thank you for the work that you're doing with the New Paradigm Institute. It's amazing. I encourage everybody to go to your website. I'll have a link for that in the description
Please.
of the video.
Terrific.
And yeah, just thank you so much. I would love to have you back again, because these are such fun topics to discuss. I feel like we've only scratched the surface
Yeah.
of some of them, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's much more to come.
Fantastic, Rob. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity. Call us anytime.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you everybody for watching. I'll see you next time.
Terrific. Thank you.